Welcome to the Solicitor General's Restorative Justice Program. My name is Keith Gamage. I'm your Solicitor General. The Solicitor General's office prosecutes traffic and misdemeanor offenses like DUI, domestic violence, and other cases involving injury to people and also injury to property. Part of our mission is to provide smart, fair, and restorative justice to Fulton's citizens while protecting our public safety. Restorative justice comes in many forms, one of them involving the clearing of criminal records to allow citizens to enjoy the full rights and benefits of citizenship. Today we are discussing record restriction in Georgia, otherwise known as criminal expungements. We're joined by a special guest, Mr. Derek George, a former youthful offender turned community leader and activist, here to tell us how he took advantage of the legal opportunity to clear his record and maximize his opportunity for success. Mr. George, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mr. Damage.
Tell us how you first came into contact with the criminal justice system and what led to your arrest.
Wow. Well, many years ago, I was raised up on the south side of Atlanta, in fact, Carver Homes housing project. At that time, there was a lot of gang activity, drug activity, and I was a product of my environment. So one day I was on the block, me and my homies, as you may put it, and Red Dogs rolled up on us. Back then they had a Red Dog unit, and they rolled up on us and they charged me with some offenses.
Have you been arrested more than once?
Yes, I have.
And have you been charged with felonies?
Yes, I have.
And did these things occur in your youth?
Yes.
Roughly how old were you when you had your first and last contact with the criminal justice system?
I would say around 19 to 21.
And were you ever under a sentence in the Superior Court of Fulton County?
Yes.
And did you avail yourself of the First Offender Act?
Oh, yes, I did.
Can you tell us about that experience?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I was charged with a crime that I did not commit. I pled guilty on that crime because I thought at the time it was in my best benefit because I had other charges before I was charged with that charge.
So the charge that you're talking about entering the plea to in Superior Court, was it a drug-related charge?
Yes, it was.
And were there other people that were around at the time of the incident?
Yes, sir.
And is there a lesson that young people can learn from that experience about being with the right people and being in the right places?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. The young man that I was charged with, it was actually me, and one had a gun in the car, and the other one had a substance, in his breeches. And when the police came up, the guy threw the gun in the car, and the guy threw the drugs down. So they charged everybody with it. And with my prior arrests months before that, it was hard for me to say, hey, I didn't do that when I already had been charged with other arrests. It just didn't look like it would be favorable for me to go to trial on charges like that.
Now, you and I both grew up in Atlanta.
Correct.
Was there a code in your community that suggested that you should not tell on these other guys?
Oh, yeah. We call it snitching. And let's say snitches get stitches, so no, nobody stitched.
How did that affect that not telling on the others? How did that affect you, an innocent man, as you've stated, being ensnared in the criminal justice system?
Well, I told the officer that it wasn't mine, but I did not want to point at these guys and say, hey, this is his and this is his. These were classmates, these are childhood friends. And at that time, and please make no mistake about it, I was doing criminal activity back then, but that particular day in question, I truly was innocent, but those guys, I didn't want to snitch on them and say, hey, it was his and this guy or that guy. I did not want to do that, and that just hurts your reputation, it hurts your family, and it's just a code of silence that you just have growing up in the hood.
Now, since you've matured and found the need to raise a family, have you taken steps to get your record expunged or cleaned of those offenses?
Yes, sir, I did.
And tell us about that.
Well, when you have those charges on you, it affects everything in your life. If you're trying to get a loan, get grants, well, not a loan, but necessary grants. If you're trying to move in a certain apartment, a certain side of town, you get denied based on something that happened years ago in your past.
Are you a different person today than you were 20 years ago?
Most definitely I am.
And I know that you're engaged in community upliftment and improvement in the Carver Homes neighborhood. You've got your own charity now.
Yes, I do.
And has the expungement or record restriction process helped enable you to better take care of your family and teach folks in the community how to do better?
Well, it did good for me, but it does even better when I mentor.
Okay.
I'm mentoring a lot of young men, and when they come to me to do community service through my nonprofit, they actually come back. They come back because they like what I teach them. I keep it straight. I meet them where they at. I don't talk over their head. I talk the language that they're talking. I know what they're facing, the influence that actually makes them do wrong in the first place. And so I try to show them through my life experience how to untangle the web that they've been put themselves in. And so the restorative justice program you have here, it really helps me out. It helps me out tremendously, and I applaud you for that.
Well, thank you so much, Derek. How can viewers reach you and your organization?
Well, they can reach us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page called Doing Good Among People. Okay, we call it DGAP for short, DGAP, but it's Doing Good Among People. We have a Facebook page. We also can call our office at 404-287-6725.
Thank you so much for joining us today and for your true commitment to serving Fulton County's most vulnerable citizens. I recently had the pleasure of meeting the Long Beach County prosecutor, who, like my office, is responsible for prosecuting all adult misdemeanor crimes committed within that jurisdiction. So what, if any, similarities do our two agencies share? Our Kenya Johnson explains.
With less than 90 days on the job, Fulton Solicitor Keith Gamage was visited by Long Beach City Prosecutor Doug Hoppert in his office. Long Beach in Los Angeles County has about 500,000 residents, and like Fulton County, their issues are diverse in nature. The two men, with much in common on this day, wanted to talk about a host of topics, with number one being diversion programs. Solicitor Gamage asked Mr. Hoppert to explain the diversion programs in his jurisdiction.
In Long Beach, we have several diversion programs that are geared towards not just affecting an outcome in a case, but affecting an outcome in a person, and trying to have them leave the criminal justice system better than they went into it. So we have programs based on helping people, if they have a suspended license, they can attend a class, try to help them get that license back, for example. We have life skills courses, and we also have a unique program that we started in Long Beach called Promising Adults Tomorrow's Hope. And it's a special workforce development program for 18 to 24-year-olds. The intent of the program is to help them become more employable, to provide better employees for the community, and also to help them keep their record clean so that they're more able to get jobs after the case.
The Long Beach prosecutor was in the Fulton County, Atlanta area for a training session on implicit bias at Morehouse College. During the conversation, Solicitor Gamage heard about what California is doing about undocumented drivers.
In California, we obviously have a large population of undocumented persons. And so in the legislature a few years ago decided that it was in the interest of public safety to have them registered, have them learn how to drive a car legally and to get a driver's license. So now anyone in California, regardless of documentation, is allowed to get a driving license. What it does is it gets people who formerly were not in the system. They hadn't been fingerprinted, they hadn't been tested for driver safety. Now they're in the system, they're eligible for a driver's license. Many of them still don't do it for fear of being in that system. But now we have a higher percentage of drivers on the street that are licensed. And I think it's probably safer for the general public, but it's also better to have them basically participate in the DMV so that there's a record of them in the case of an accident or anything else.
Statistics tell us that those folks who drop out of high school are most likely to be the folks we see incarcerated and spending long-term sentences in prison. Has your office done anything to address those issues with special regard to young people?
I'm glad you identified that as an issue because prosecutors don't often think that way in a long-term basis. But there's no question that state prisons are full of people that dropped out of high school. As high as 80% of the state prisoners in California are dropouts. So if we can do anything to improve attendance at school and help people just get through 12th grade, we know they're going to be more employable, they're less likely to be abusing drugs and alcohol, and they're far more likely to be members of society in a productive way, far less likely to be involved in crime. they're also less likely to become victims of crime. In one study in one of the counties in California, they found that 95% of the murder victims under the age of 25 were dropouts. So not only are they more likely to be involved in criminal activity, they're more likely to be the victim of criminal activity. So we're really targeting chronic truancy in the early grades as a real big focus for our office, trying to keep them engaged as early as 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. In some of the at-risk neighborhoods, we know there's a high level of gang recruitment. We feel that keeping the kids in school just through graduation will help starve the gangs of new members, help improve their chances in life, and make Long Beach a safer community.
That's fantastic. I salute you really for those efforts and for being a progressive-minded prosecutor. Here in Georgia, particularly in the metro area, we are moving toward criminal justice reform, and I am very much rooted in restorative justice, figuring out approaches that not only protect the public from those serious criminals, those folks who are a threat to our public safety, but doing all we can to keep young people in school, to keep folks on track for employment. And so I'm so glad that you took a moment to come by and share with us some of your ideas, and that we can form a partnership going forward and be helpful to one another across state lines.
Absolutely. And Solicitor General Gamage, I appreciate your leadership on these issues as well. Something you said a few minutes ago really struck a chord with me, and that is that prosecutors historically have been fighting hard to be considered tough on crime. What we really ought to be doing is trying to be smart on crime. And sometimes that means treating different people a little bit differently as regard to their record. Someone with a longer record maybe needs a more harsh punishment than someone who's a first-time offender, a low-level offender. This may be their first intersection with the criminal justice system. And if we can return them to society better than they went into the criminal justice system, you know what we're going to do? We're going to prevent them from graduating on from misdemeanors to becoming felons. And our jobs as misdemeanor prosecutors, I think, should be to do that, to reduce crime, not just today and exact justice today, but make sure there's reduced crime 5 years, 10 years, 15 years.
I concur with you. Thank you for your efforts and for all that you give to the citizens of our country.
And thank you for your service. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kenya. And it was great meeting Prosecutor Doug Harbert. As you've heard, restorative justice comes in many forms. We've learned about restorative justice efforts from our colleagues in Long Beach, California, and criminal record restrictions right here at home in Fulton County during the Record Restrictions Summit, showing another way that Fulton County is committed to helping citizens thrive by clearing their criminal records and removing barriers to employment and housing. As we close, we invite you to join us on our website and social media. Be sure to sign up and receive the Gamage Report, our quarterly newsletter. Please join us next time as we continue the conversation about restorative justice for a whole and safer Fulton County. For Restorative Justice, I'm Solicitor General Keith Gamage. Until next time, please be safe